say that the Mayor's running a few minutes late, so we're just finding out exactly how late, and then if needs be, we'll start the meeting and rejig the agenda a bit, but so we're not going to start on the dot of 10. Welcome everybody. I think Jill's going to say a few words.
Good morning everybody, welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. This is just a housekeeping comment. We're not expecting any fire alarms or drills today, so if the alarm does go off, please follow Combined Authority staff who have these lanyards, and we will take you through the fire exit at the back of the room. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody, and welcome Helen. You've received a number of questions. I think you should be answering them in the order in which they were received. People have maximum of 2 questions, and then which they've given to you, and then 1 follow-up question relating to those 2 questions. So I think the first question that I'd seen was from Mark Weston, but I'm not sure. Mark's not here. I'm not sure we've received apologies from him, have we? Okay. Well, if he does arrive, then let's deal with his question later. Yeah. But otherwise, you take. I think I've kind of got them in roughly the right order, but yeah. I'll follow you.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Fine. Okay.
Summarise it.
Fine. Okay. Perfect. And just to thank scrutiny members and especially the chair for moving this meeting forward today as well. I appreciate that. So Tim, you asked a question about the focus on clean energy and nature recovery through our tidal energy programmes, and also some of the community energy projects, and then asked how we're working to prioritise clean energy in the region. So I think the kind of most obvious answer, I guess, is that we have included clean energy as one of our 5 key growth sectors in the growth strategy, and that enables us to make sure that we've got resource that goes into promoting that sector, working with businesses that are in the main sort of growing businesses in this space. So we think we've got about 400 companies in the region that are focused on clean energy, and we want to make sure that they feel supported and able to grow, because we expect this to be a significant growth sector. When we have conversations with officials and politicians at DESNZ in particular, there is a real sense that we are one of the leading regions in this space. And I think some of that is that kind of mixed economy that we can support. So whether it's the work that we want to do on tidal, whether it's the work that we have already started to do around solar, rooftop solar, offshore wind, our ambitions around SMR at the top of the sort of Severn Estuary, and also really importantly the community energy work that's already taken place. I think the most famous thing is obviously the Lawrence Western turbine, and the government did choose to launch its Warm Homes plan here in the west of England because they see us as a place that is leading the way on this. So there's a lot of lobbying to do, to be honest with you, with DESNZ and others in terms of some of the bigger investment. But we know that through the kind of structure that we've got, there's retro partnerships and stakeholders coming in to really push that sector, that we can keep pushing.
Thank you. And do you have a follow-up question, Tim?
No follow-up, but just to say, obviously, this has come right to the fore of the agenda at the moment with what's going on globally, and hopefully some of those doors that you're pushing out will be a bit easier to open as a result of what's going on. Yeah,
no, I agree, and certainly, like, I think the Secretary of State has been very robust about that commitment to renewables and energy security, and sees this as the way forward. So the energy, the noise is right in the government. There is an understanding of us as a place, as somewhere that we should be doing this work. So we just got to join that up as strongly as we can, and that's for all of us to do collectively, I think. Shall I summarise the second question?
Yes, please. Yeah.
So the second question, your second question, Tim, was around.
Oh, not from Tim.
Oh, sorry.
Tim's question came in after time, so we could work for people.
Oh, okay. No, I think Tim sent 3 questions in, and 2 were in time.
Okay.
Oh. Fine. Okay.
Right, yeah, we'll go to the second.
Sorry. Okay, so this is about the government's proposal to allow combined authorities to spend a portion of locally generated income tax. And would we be using that potentially to support the mass transit, jumping ahead, the transport vision and potential mass transit. So it won't surprise anyone to hear me say that I welcome those proposals that the Chancellor talked about last week. It's, it's certainly amongst the kind of combined authorities and amongst the mayors, this feels like a very, very significant moment. Obviously, it won't happen overnight. But what it would do, absolutely, as you suggest, is give us the ability to have more control and to put that investment into something that I think is our key barrier to further growth around the transport network. So that will be a priority for us. We will have opportunities sooner than that through the overnight visitor levy, which that will, I would imagine, be introduced in this Parliament, and that would enable us to also think about specific transport challenges that we get through the visitor economy, nighttime economy workers, etc. But also, if we get our integrated settlement that we hope to receive in the next spending review, then that will enable us also to think about how we organise our own spending so that we can support transport more robustly. And then we expect a second TCR in the next spending review as well. Thank you.
And I think Mark is next into the hot seat.
He just appeared.
Yes, he did. And and he was asking about public transport and active travel infrastructure in the Avonmouth and Sevenside industrial area. So perhaps.
Yeah, so I'll just go straight in, Mark, if that's all right. So yeah, as you know, Severn Estuary is one of our designated growth zones, and so that will mean that we will have a focus on that from a transport perspective. The sort of outline approach to TCR, which is in this month's committee papers, talks about kind of the growth zones leading the way. So that will give us the ability to start thinking strategically about what that transport infrastructure is that we need. I also met last week with Claire Young, who's the MP for the sort of northern part of the Severn Estuary, and had a very similar conversation as you might expect. And I meet with the SevernNet group really often, and I know that there are transport issues. I know that BCC, I think, commissioned some services from Clean Air Fund to take people out to Sevenside who work there, but I think it's more significant than that. And I also get the sense that the actual physical infrastructure needs some work as well. And then obviously on rail, that's as we know, an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. That's very good, and I welcome everything you're doing. I would say what you probably need to do, or what someone needs to do, is actually chat to people that work there.
Yeah.
It's the actual movements that they are physically doing. It's very car dependent, but actually the nature of the job means people are trying to get public transport, which is almost non-existent, or they're trying to walk from within the industrial area to where they can catch a bus. So you might walk into Lawrence Weston. And if you ever try to do that approach, it's a slightly hair-raising experience. And I hope you like dogs, but they won't like you because they're running wild out there. So it's actually, it's the lived experience of people trying to do the commute.
Yeah.
There are very limited pathways. There's almost no lighting.
Yeah.
So if you're a woman walking through there trying to get, it is not safe. But no one seems to be talking or thinking in that dimension.
Yeah.
They're just thinking about buses or trains.
Yeah.
Not actually the lived experience of people working in the area.
Understood.
So when you are looking at it, I welcome that. If you could ensure you're looking at lighting as well as transport.
Yeah, understood. Can I come back on that just briefly? So so I thought that's where you were going to go, and I can visualize all of that, and I know down there it's you know, it's not pedestrian friendly in any way, is it, even to connect up to existing services. So I think we want to make sure that we are, when we think about those growth zones, we are thinking holistically and thinking about what is the experience. I think it's a great shout to go and talk to people that work down there. We're also looking at maintenance funding around roads and pavements and the network as part of that initial sketch out of what TCR might look like. And that would include, I think, some sort of fund that I would, or it would sit here directly, but we would look to work with community groups and councillors directly on that to think about specific projects. So this would be one that we could definitely talk about. And, you know, I'm always happy to catch up with you on things Severn Estuary anyway.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next on your list, Helen.
Next on my list is your good self, Jerome.
Okay, lovely. So my question was really, well, first of all, welcoming the discussion that we were able to have about the transport vision with members of the committee the other day. That was very helpful, and minutes of that have been shared with members of the committee. One of the things I want to pick up on is how serious a problem you think traffic congestion is for the area, and how, I mean, we can see that mass transit might address it in the long run, but in the short and medium term, how do you plan to address the severity of traffic congestion?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Jerome. So yeah, obviously we have got a very significant challenge here. Both of our cities, both Bristol and Bath, are in the top 10 most congested cities nationally, and we know that it costs us a lot of money, as well as the challenges around air quality and air pollution that congestion can cause. So I think it's fair to say that my approach to this is a balance between carrot and stick. So whilst I am absolutely committed to getting people out of their cars, we need to put them somewhere, and that somewhere needs to be public transport. And so I think by committing to improving not just our buses, but also the work we're doing, which is, you know, genuinely very significant around rail. There aren't many places doing what we're doing, and at the pace we're doing it, and making that commitment around mass transit. We are trying to give people those other opportunities. Some of that is longer term, I appreciate, but we're also thinking about our active travel network, thinking about micro mobility. So you know, that we are putting things in play. But in my view, it has to be carrots, not just sticks. And I think the other thing that we've just got to be candid about is that in order to get the infrastructure that supports the public transport, it's painful, and that does commit to the congestion as well, right? So it's getting that balance right of not particularly in Bristol, you know, not having a city that doesn't work at all for 2 years for something really, really great in the long term. We've got to find that balance, and I think we're there at the moment, but it still feels very painful for people.
Thank you. So, I mean, my follow-up question would be, I mean, you talk about the economic cost of both Bristol and Bath being the top 10 sort of most congested cities in the country. Under what conditions, with regards to the kind of the stick on traffic congestion, would you consider congestion charging?
Well, I mean, I think the clean air zone, that's obviously for Bristol, and Bath is up to Bath for what they do. So at the moment, it's not something that I would consider for us to get involved with.
Thank you. And then my second question was about, not a follow-up question, was about, very good to see the business plan and kind of that done and dusted before the beginning of the new year. Lots of actions. I'm just wondering what you would say your top 3 priorities were.
Yeah, you're right. There are lots of actions. And I think, you know, hopefully members feel that, you know, the difference in the last 10 months is that we are now an organisation that is focused on delivery and focused on getting stuff done, which I hope everyone would agree is good news. But obviously transport is the key thing. You know, if I look at my inbox, transport is the thing that's holding us back as a region, and so getting that right is really important, both in the immediate sense but also in that longer term planning. Also gaining established status for us, because that is what unlocks more funding, that's what unlocks the integrated settlement, that's what enables us to be a lot more ambitious as an organisation, and also enables us to do all the things that I think all of us want to see happen. And, you know, making sure that through our skills strategy in particular, we're creating those opportunities for not just young people, but working age adults, people who are economically inactive at the moment, so that as we talk about growth and we talk about 72,000 jobs and all of those good things, and we know we can do all of that, we've got a workforce that feels confident and able to go out and take those opportunities. So that's really important.
Thank you, that's very clear.
I've got Kelvin on my list next. Do you want me to summarise it?
Yes, yes, please.
Well, Kelvin says he's impressed with the Kids Go Free initiative. And latest data shows that most deprived areas in the region with the lowest household incomes had some of the highest uplifts in travel. With this level of impact, do you have any more plans for initiatives like this that can help get more kids and young people using the bus? So thank you, first of all, and I'm also thrilled with the impact. It's worked really, really well, and it has worked best in the places that we think needed it most. So that is good news, and we will be doing it again in Easter holidays. So when the kids break up next Friday, they will be able to travel free again for the next 2 weeks, which I think is good news. So we do now have a 3-year bus settlement. So that does give us the ability. We've got £42 million bus grant. And that means that we can start to actually plan out the next 3 years. So all members I know will know the pain of those bus services that, you know, are hanging on by a thread for a little bit longer, and we will be able to secure that. But we will also want to we've got about 10 million allocated for fares and ticketing initiatives. So that would include Kids Go Free. That also includes bus travel for the Youth Guarantee participants. The £1 child fare cap is being frozen until 2029, which is really good news for families all through the year. And we're continuing free bus travel for care leavers under 25. The Diamond Pass, which is for people of a pensionable age, that operates for 19 hours a day, and we've got a 24/7 pass for disabled people as well. So a good balance, I hope.
Thank you, Helen. Well, given that I'm a beneficiary of the Diamond Pass, I've mentioned that and use it often. And being one of those kids that grew up in the Old West and didn't have access to the bus until I was quite much older. Actually, when I first got my job, it was the first time I sort of went into town properly. So really good to see that. What are we doing to coordinate? Because it's overall getting the bus, but what are we doing to coordinate with Bristol and others places to kind of ensure that there's events for people to go down and actually get the bus for, getting a reason for getting the bus?
Yeah, and so we do work from a sort of promotions point of view. So we've made sure that one of the things I wanted to do was make sure that we included it on all the school newsletters this time, because most parents who maybe aren't on social media or won't be as connected, and they will read their kids' school newsletter. So we're trying to sort of socialise it as far as we can. But one of the sort of kernels, if you like, that was planted around Kids Go Free was years and years ago when I was on the council. I met some kids from Hartcliffe who told me that it was all very well having the Harbour Festival and the M Shed and all of that as free, but if it was costing mum and dads, you know, 15, 16 quid to get into town, then they weren't going to be going anyway. So so a lot of our stuff is free, and I think BCC does a really good job, and Baines of having lots to do, especially during the holidays. But it was just connecting up with the travel, so we'll keep working in lockstep.
Thank you. I think Jess is next, isn't she?
Yeah, I've got a second one from Kelvin. Is that okay? So.
Yeah. Need to speed up a little bit.
Yeah, sorry, I'll say less. So this is the business plan for strategic place partnership with Homes England that you talked about. So what we're doing to tackle our region's housing crisis. This is very well timed and not we didn't know this would happen today, but we've just had announced £45 million for the Brownfield Housing Fund for the region. That's been announced this morning, and that is very, very significant. We've got above average in terms of allocation for that. We think that's going to unlock about 800 homes and help to make some of the schemes that have planning but are struggling with viability viable again. So that is really, really good news. We've also had the announcement that Brabazon has made it into the shortlist for the new towns, which is very significant. There's only 7. Well, I think government investment into a place is always going to be good news. So I would hope you might be an outlier on that, Mark. And then, you know, we've got the strategic place partnership. So essentially what that enables us to do is work with Homes England and work together on the schemes that we really want to get done and delivered, and they can help us coordinate government departments and make sure that we've got that focus, I guess. And transport is really key to that, because in most places that I went to in the election, people were happy to have new homes provided they had transport connectivity, there were public services nearby. So that is the principle that we're working to with Homes England.
Just very, very quickly, obviously getting homes built is really important for all of us, but ensuring we've got the right skills and the people to do it. Just give us, you know, a couple of sentences on what you're doing to ensure that we've got the resources to do.
For that, actually, Kelvin.
Well, I can just say very quickly, we're funding 90 new apprentices, which is coming through in the committee papers in construction.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got Tristan next, which is about does the government's intention to legalise the use of privately owned e-scooters on the public highway pose a challenge to the next integrated micro-mobility service contract? Which I think I can give quite a good answer to, that I don't think it will, in the sense that with the e-bike hire, we've got a mixed economy where e-bikes are perfectly legal and people still choose to rent e-bikes, and I imagine that will be the same with the scooters.
Thank you. My follow-ups. Will the West England Combined Authority lobby the Department for Transport to ensure the same degree of regulation applies to the purchase and use of private e-scooters as currently applies to the rental e-scooters?
Yeah, I don't know where the government is, apart from saying that perhaps we do need to look into this at pace. It does feel silly that we've had privately owned scooters for such a long time, and we don't have, you know, they're not regulated in the way that we would expect them to be. So I'm really happy to work with government on that, and also to represent the region in sharing views on that.
Thank you. And Tristan's second question was about the benefits and challenges of producing a spatial development strategy with a 25-year plan period.
Yes, so just very quickly, we looked at 20 years and we looked at 30 years. We went for 30 years because that was that enabled us to be more vision-led, but it did enable us still to keep the local plan real and alive within it. So that was agreed by informally by leaders on the bilaterals that we had.
Okay, thank you. My follow-up is the government's. Okay, yeah, my follow-up is that the government's proposed changes to the MPPF would require an SDS to be adopted at the very latest every 10 years and modified every 5 years. Do you think the combined authority and its constituent authorities have sufficient resources to meet this exacting requirement?
Yes, and we will have to keep developing ourselves so that we can meet that requirement by working together. So as you know, we're an evolving organisation, so what we have right now might not be what we need in 10 years' time, but we are working towards where we need to get to as we get more powers as well.
Thank you. And I think we're still just about okay for time. We've got Jess next.
If you want to do a quick summary, Jeff, that would be really helpful. I had Toby Wells next on mine, but
they're very close, but we'll have time for both because we're starting a bit late as well.
Right, mine are both about e-bikes and e-scooters. So firstly, I noted that you'd stated that we'd had a significant increase in marked bays installed and that you had further locations planned. So I just wanted to ask a bit more about this. How will these be delivered and how will you ensure they're sort of equitable across the different authorities? And then secondly, kind of related to that, what evidence do you have that the current enforcement regime is improving, particularly around parking compliance, and how will you look to strengthen this in the re-tendering of the contract? And that's, I've seen particular issues kind of in Outer Bath where bikes and scooters are just dumped and then hang there for several days. So how can you improve that?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. So I'll just respond to that at pace, Jerome. So we've got £1 million in CRSTS, which is for further parking locations. So there are since Scoot Safe, which we launched last summer, we've rolled out 52 new bays, and we're working with officers at the UAs to understand where's the best place to do that, and to identify how we can do that. So it's about demand, where the demand is, where the space is, and working together, but we'll usually defer to the UAs on that because of the locality bit. So since the start of Scoot Safe, which was last August, we've issued 16,000 fines between September and January. And the data tells us that 99% of journeys are now ending in a proper parking spot verified through in-app photos. So that feels like really good news. And as I said, we want to keep working with the UAs on that kind of data and intelligence around that. The re-tender contract will include performance metrics enabling operational contract management. And at the moment, this is helpful for everyone to know, I think the operators are contracted to remove vehicles posing a challenge within 6 hours of being reported. So I think if we can kind of make that known, and you know, I'm sure my inbox will know when that's not being taken care of.
Just a quick follow up on that point. Do you have a sense of compliance on that 6 hours?
I don't, but we can come back to you on that. We'll try and find out where we're at with that. No problem.
Okay.
So then I've got Toby, which is the LTDB shows a further 2 years of studies on bus reform. Is it really the case we'll have to wait that long before decisions are made on the long-term future of our bus network? So it's basically been, it's been put in just to make sure that we've got the money's being banked, as it were. So it doesn't define the timelines. It's just making sure that we've got the money there to do the work. So I don't expect it to be that long.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. A quick follow-up on bus reform. Do you think the recent announcement on the retention of taxation locally, does that change the equation for the bus reform options?
I think it does change the question. I think we are about to enter a period whereby we have so significant changes to how this organisation will be funded. So even at the moment, our investment fund, which you know is the big ticket fund that we talk most about, is only 11% of our budget. When we move to integrated settlement, that gives us very different powers in terms of how we spend. If we look about the overnight visitor levy, we think about any changes around income tax or business rate, that does start to change things for us. But as it stands at the moment, we are looking to develop that enhanced partnership plus. We've been very robust in terms of what our ask will be around that. But as I've said, I think in every meeting, we haven't closed the door on any type of bus reform as it stands.
Thank you. And your second question, Toby?
Yeah, do you want to just summarise it, Helen?
Yeah, sure. So how did we reach 150 million for mass transit in the TCL funding allocation? So it's a high level allocation. So this paper that's going to March committee is very high level, and then we'll come back in September with a much more detailed one. But the key thing is that mass transit is on equal footing with bus and rail. And the aim there is that we can move at pace, but also that we can demonstrate the commitment to this, and that we are looking to deliver at the soonest possible moment, and we don't want to get lost in years and years of thinking about it or feasibility, that we want to move quickly and deliver for people.
There was a second part to the question, but perhaps it was cheeky trying to get two questions in one, so I'll ask it as the follow-up. So for that 150 million, what sort of point in the project life cycle do you expect to reach?
Yeah, okay, so I mean, we are looking at a 15-year plan for mass transit, and but the ambition is for us to deliver something within 4 to 5 years, so within that first TCL period.
What does deliver something mean?
So I can't say at this point.
Is it a business case, or is it something?
Oh no, it'll be a delivery that people, normal people, can see and feel and touch. Well, all of us, I should say.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
That brings questions to a close. Sorry, the sequence wasn't quite joined
No,
up.
no, no,
The
don't
mayor
worry,
and I
it's
didn't have
fine.
time to meet before the meeting to.
Yeah, sorry,
allocate.
had personal stuff this morning, so I was a bit late. So
that's fine.
apologies.
All right. We're moving on to the main body of the meeting, and the first of those items is the sort of approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Sorry.
Just got one question on the minutes, if I may, please, Chair.
Yeah.
On page
This
10
is
of the
Councillor Bradbury, who's standing in for Councillor Addison.
Yeah, sorry, I should have explained that. Yeah, I'm subbing for Councillor Addison. On page 10 of the report pack, references made to the scrapping of the Police and Crime Commissioner's role, and there's going to be a report on that. I just wanted to ask if it's known yet when and if that report on the implications going forward might be available, so we know in future how the constabulary can be scrutinised going forward, absent the Commissioner.
When you say page 10, are you referring, what do you?
On the minutes on page 10.
Okay.
Chair, this is a matter for accuracy
Yes.
only for signing off the minutes. There's no matters arising from the minutes. If we wish to pick something up for additional business, then there's an additional business item agenda later on in the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm happy to propose the minutes as an accurate record. Do I have a seconder? Yeah. Councillor Wells, thank you.
Yep, microphone, Chair.
We're now on to any declarations of interest under the Localism Act 2011. Do we have any declarations of interest? No. Thank you. So we now welcome public statements, and we have a number of people who've submitted statements and are here to speak to them. Could I remind you that you've got a 3-minute maximum speaking time, and the first person to speak is Rosa Kell, and she's speaking to statement number 9. Welcome, Rosa.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Somerset Catch the Bus campaign. And while we support the bus delivery priority measures on the Farrington, A37, Farrington, Gurney, Pensford, Hengrove, etc., and the A4 Portray to Bristol, we are concerned that the funding gap between 26 and 29 means that there is a reduction in a lot of services, and temporary contracts obviously have been given until the 31st of July, and there's concern as to the amount of services that are going to be cut from there. We are concerned at the very deep cuts on the 50 bus Bristol city centre to Stapleton is reducing from an hourly 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to only 4 shopping trips per day. Also, the 61 Brislington, which could be covered by service 5 or 36, simply by rerouting it via Stapleton, Frenchay, instead of going up Fish Ponds Road. We are concerned for the Y8 Yates Park and Ride, Yates Bristol Railway Station, Yates Bus Station, Chipping Sodbury, Stroud and Mary Walk Bus and Coach Station, the V2 Bath Spa Timbury, the X91 Bristol to Chew Valley, the 99 again Chew Valley local services, the P1 Bristol to Winsford, the 40 Avonmouth Dock to Lawrence, Weston, Embury, Crossroads, the 25 Bristol City Centre, St Paul's, Eastville, Fish Ponds. Again, this could be merged with Service 50 and could cover Stapleton Villages and Black Hill. There is a concern there hasn't been enough communication with the bus passenger groups. We would appreciate very much your help in getting the Mayor and the Local Transport Authority to talk to Bristol City Council and the other authorities, and perhaps get them to fund a little bit more.
30 seconds left.
To cut the shortfall. I'll leave it there for now. There is some more I want to say about the railway stations and the rail services, but I'm sure you've all read the statement, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Rosa. And did you want to speak also to David Redgewell's statement?
I do indeed. Thank you very much for that. Having covered my own statement, I suspect David is very much. Similar. He starts with, "We are concerned that there was no report submitted to the Transport Connectivity Committee of Bristol City Council on the 19th of March regarding the service cuts for the Bristol area. We felt that there should have been a report telling them what cuts are going to be coming into Bristol. The services he mentions, obviously, is the 61 Brislington Town Centre to Bristol, which is being removed. The 5 could have been rerouted with the 36 and would have served the Brislington and Hankford Road. The 50, as I've said in my own report, again, could be rerouted. The 42 Bristol City Centre, which is being cancelled, and especially evening and Sundays, those areas will be cut off. We appreciated that the government transport grant didn't arrive until the 19th of December, and that the mayoral authority is going to be short of funds on the 3-year grants. But we feel that the government needs integrated, and the government needed the report for the 20th of March, which we presume is being submitted. We were very much employ the authority pleased to work with Bristol City Council, Baines, Gloucestershire, North Somerset, and hopefully with Somerset Unitary as well, and make available some of the Western demand services to replace those areas that are being cut. We are concerned that these tenders are coming to an end at the 31st of July, and there's going to be large swathes of this region that are going to be end up with no bus transport. And obviously they're needed for access to education, jobs, hospitals, and basic shopping, and anything that the authority can do to reduce those cuts is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. And next is Amelia, statement 12, Amelia Melville.
Hello. Oh, yeah, that's loud enough. Great. So I have a statement that's about the precept and bus franchising. So we recently saw news articles about the mayor saying that franchising is not currently being investigated due to the likely unpopularity of adding a precept to council tax. And today I'm writing in a personal capacity, although I'm also a member of Reclaim Our Bus campaign. And while we hope that a franchised bus system would result in much higher passenger numbers and wash its own face financially, I understand that this is unpredictable and that WECA needs to have a form of income within its own control to be able to take that step. Having to go begging to national government in competitive funding processes is not a reliable long-term way of having a budget that WECA has control over. A precept on council tax is the most obvious way, although not the only one, of getting long-term reliable revenue funding for transport services in the current system. Council tax is well known to be a regressive form of taxation and sorely in need of updating. However, I believe that the residents of the West of England may well be willing to accept a precept in exchange for a reliable, well-designed bus network. No one is trying to remove the precept that funds policing. We should have the opportunity to have an informed public conversation about this. That means having information such as how much would the precept be per person, what can be achieved in a franchised bus system, Who would benefit from additional reliable and frequent routes, etc.? Despite being a regressive form of tax, it's quite likely that the poorest and most vulnerable people in the west of England would gain more from having better buses than they would pay in the precept. The cost to society, especially to the most underserved communities of poor bus access, is well documented. We cannot have a sensible conversation about true informed public opinion about a precept until the Mayor has commissioned a full analysis of bus franchising. This means starting the process of accessing the commercial data from operators, which would become available to the Mayor if she begins the franchising process with a letter of intent. The people of the West of England deserve to be consulted on this matter in an informed way. When will the Mayor carry out a detailed cost-benefit analysis of bus franchising?
Thank you very much, Amelia. And apologies for that. Matt Sanders, speaking to statement number 16.
Bristol City Council is currently developing proposals for the South Bristol livable neighbourhood, but WECA funding is only available for a livable neighbourhood if it eliminates through traffic by installing modal filters, as shown in the Council's proposals for Southville. Traffic data show that the Council website says traffic data show that high numbers of vehicles from outside the area use residential streets in Southville as a cut-through to other destinations. But what specific traffic data actually proves this claim? When we ask this question, we are directed to a folder containing 94 spreadsheets for studies carried out in June of 2024. However, when we ask which specific spreadsheets support the website's claim, no answer is ever forthcoming. The only way to demonstrate that vehicles are cutting through rather than driving to or from destinations within this area is to have number plate recognition cameras throughout the streets of Southville and simultaneously more cameras on all the perimeter roads. This council map reveals that in June 2024, there were 25 cameras in South Bristol, shown by the red and blue tabs. None of these cameras were within the Southville zone, shown in yellow, but 2 cameras were on Southville's perimeter roads. Camera 14 was on Coronation Road at the top of this sheet. Camera 16 was on North Street at the bottom of this sheet. On 11th of June 2024, each of these cameras saw more than 1,000 vehicles, which are also detected by other cameras within the same 15 minutes. But only 4 of these vehicles were detected by both of these cameras, and there is no way of knowing if they drove around the perimeter of the Southville zone or cut through the middle, as there are no cameras within the zone to identify any cutting through. The vast majority of matching detections related to camera 1 at Clift House Road on the left of this sheet, as vehicles seen by camera 14 drove along Coronation Road, the northern perimeter of the Southville zone, while those seen by camera 16 drove along North Street, the southern perimeter, all without cutting through Southville zone. So no, there is no traffic data to prove the website's claim of high numbers of vehicles cutting through Southville. But without that data, there is no justification for imposing modal filters. The design has clearly been reverse engineered to solve a problem which does not really exist in order to access the WECA funding package. So the entire South Bristol livable neighbourhood is nothing more than a house of cards proposed on the basis of this fundamental lie.
Thank you, Matt. And Zoe Mack speaking to statement number 5.
Right. Bristol City Council held a consultation with South Bristol with clear results. This is about the SPLN. To slow traffic on North Street and Coronation Road and improve parking. A wholly unworkable plan was then submitted, which not only ignored the consultation results, but would actually make the situation on both key issues worse. The council then asked the community to feed back on this scheme. Unsurprisingly, there were 18,000 responses, which they then spent thousands of taxpayers' money sifting through. A small control group might have quickly informed this council that the design was flawed in many ways, rather than needing to hear that from everyone in the community, presumably the same people multiple times, as no controls over this were in place. Now we understand that a new design will be done based on all this feedback, and this will be fully worked into a business case to be voted on and then submitted to WECA yourselves. Given the public weren't listened to when we were first asked what we wanted, it seems unlikely that the council will be listening to us now. Constantly asking but not listening to what is being said is wholly undemocratic and not within the guidelines set out by the Livable Neighbourhood Schemes Manual. The result of the way BCC, Bristol City Council, has conducted things has eroded public trust. We've watched with shock the way the scheme was forced on the residents of East Bristol. Billed as being a trial, but implemented in the middle of the night with permanent planters and no budget to remove them. In fact, more money had to be voted through to make urgent changes and the meeting of the 5th of February 2026. As much as Councillor Ed Plowden wants EBLN to be a success, the fact is that traffic has just moved from one road to another. So some roads less polluted and others more. Is that really worth spending millions on? Council meeting of the 5th of February 2026, Adam Crowther, the Strategic City Transport Service Manager at Bristol City Council, stated, so far the data from the changes to EBLN show improvements across the EBLN area. Some boundary areas improved and then other boundary areas got worse, but we don't have 12 months of data. He says improvements, but the data isn't showing that. As WECA has the power to stop this farce, we implore you, stop these schemes now. As data from the traffic monitoring in Southfield is slow to materialise, we ask that you visit Southfield during different times of the day. It's a lovely area with a large amount of active travel right now. None of the reported rat running. Please don't throw away money
30 seconds
away on a scheme that isn't needed and will cause pollution, road rage and impact poorly on local businesses, as it is already doing in East Bristol. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. And our final speaker, welcome Joe Sargent, speaking to statement number 8.
Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you've read my statement, but I'll just touch on a few points in it and also refer back to the question that I put in about why there is no kind of plan to investigate franchising. And I've been told a report was mentioned, another report, and apparently that's due out later this year. And I don't know if that's the same report that was talked about in early 2024 that was supposed to be coming out last year, but it would be great to get a little bit more clarity on that. And so I'm sort of here today to ask you people, committee members, to use your influence and raise the profile of this as a very important topic. And, you know, obviously I've put the reasons why I think this is important, and my colleague and friend Amelia has also alluded to them. But the reality is, I would say that getting mass transit that isn't related to buses within the next few years is about as likely as me becoming Britain's next top model. And, you know, I'm not even sure whether I might actually have a better chance in that. So that means we are reliant on buses. And if we don't get a system that doesn't rely on first bus and its first duty to its shareholders, we are not going to get what we need. There are people across the region who do not know if they're going to get a bus, if it's going to turn up. And they're not frequent enough. I mean, I live in Bristol, and I went out to get the number 13 the other day, and I stood at the bus stop, and it's an hourly bus. It is actually not a first bus; it's a supported service, but it didn't turn up. The next one would not be due for an hour later, and I would, you know, life's too short. So lucky for me, someone gave me a lift, which was great, but that's not an option for everyone. And if we were really serious about reducing congestion and our carbon footprint, we will not be relying on mum and dad taxi or anybody else to get people from A to B or from A to B to C. And, you know, the research that we've done consistently shows that people are, you know, are too reliant on their cars, and if they haven't got a car to be reliant on, they're stuck at home. And if we don't get out of this enhanced partnership with First Bus, I think this is just going to carry on, and we are not going to see the change we need. And trams and trains are fantastic. I love them, but we're not going to get them anytime soon. So please, can we get a conversation about bus franchising? And you guys, please keep talking about it.
Thank you very much, Jo. We're moving on to the rest of the agenda, and that starts with Chair's announcements. So I think the first thing that I want to pick up on is I said thank you to the Mayor for the meeting with the Mayor and with the Director of Transport, Emma Blackham, which we had last week, specifically on the transport vision. That was very welcome. And we believe that it would have been better if the Scrutiny Committee has had its input sought and acted on before the vision was finalised and publicised. So I just want to make that clear. I mean, we've kind of attempted to put that right. The written feedback on the Mayor's transport vision will comprise the comments that were made by councillors in last week's meeting with the Mayor, and the comments and the answers to questions that we've received today in today's meeting, and I'll put those forward to the joint committee meeting for this Friday. The other thing I'd like to say is that we'll have a short break at the point before we start reviewing the joint committee papers as well. So those are the only sort of items I wanted to raise as chair. And we are now on to an item which was requested. Sorry, Tim.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. Just very quickly, I've read the report on that meeting, and I've let Jill know that I don't think that my question was relayed correctly in that report. So I don't know whether there's time to amend.
Absolutely. If you want to sort of email me and myself and Jill, and we'll make sure that's properly captured. And if anybody else who was at the meeting wants to kind of make sure that their questions were captured properly, then do let me know. Thank you. On to the next item, which is an item requested by members at the last committee meeting, which was a report on organisational changes and the target operating model for the combined authority. And this came out of the fact that a number of these changes of organisational importance are being dealt with through the employment committee, which we don't have a general remit to scrutinise. Actually, there's a lot that's redacted coming out of that, and so particularly when it comes to issues such as the redundancy of the environment director and the adult skills director, it felt really important that we should have a sense of what's the rationale that's guiding this, and a sense of the overall approach to the organisational design. So Stephen and Ben have been working jointly on this paper, and I think Ben Mosley, you're going to talk to this.
Thank you, and just apologies if my voice is a bit wobbly after the incident earlier. So we are 1 year into the 3-year organisational improvement programme, which provides the opportunity for us to make improvements. We need to be ready for the opportunities devolution presents. It's vital that we will be performing at our best to deliver the growth strategy. So the Organisational Improvement Programme consists of 16 work streams, which ensures that we review all the core functions of the organisations to ensure that we have the structures and services, and we make improvements to our governance and our systems so that we can deliver the important programmes which will make a real difference to people's lives. So the paper details the recent senior leadership changes, including the senior appointments and departures, and explains how these shifts align with the broader transformation programme. The work which is ongoing to our structures is expected to conclude early on in the summer, subject to a staff engagement, and an update including staff structures will be available to this committee should you wish to receive an update. Central to the paper is the development of a revised target operating model, which we currently do not have, and we've not had one as a combined authority. And so this operating model will clarify roles, strengthen the accountability and reporting structures, and improve our capacity to deliver strategic priorities effectively. The report also includes the development of a regional delivery framework, which will set out how will we deliver the programs and projects, and how will we work with unitary authorities in particular. And we're working in collaboration to develop that framework. The report also emphasises the importance of building organisational resilience, enhanced governance arrangements, and effective working practices, and ensuring that the workforce is appropriately structured to meet the opportunities devolution, such as the established authority status and integrated settlement, presents the region. Overall, this report is a high-level update, and it provides an overview of the steps we are taking to support improved performance, more efficient decision-making, and readiness for a greater devolved powers and responsibilities across the region.
Thank you very much, Ben. And just for clarification, there was an incident involving the mayor, wasn't there? There was some kerfuffle at the back. Did you want to say anything about that, Stephen? Because obviously, it will.
No, I think it's still being looked at. So it's probably best not to say anything just now.
Okay.
But everyone is okay.
Good. That's the important thing. Thank you. I think, Ben, and I think you referenced this at the start of what you said, which is that we will have an update around staffing structures. I think that what will be really helpful to know, I mean, I might call it an organogram of the senior leadership team, but who's in charge of buses, who's in charge of active travel? You know, now that Stephen Bashford has gone, who's in charge of adult skills? You know, it's the sense of at that kind of senior, the very senior level and beneath it, that we've got a sort of name in the frame for overall responsibility. So I think if you're able to take that forward, that will be really helpful. And I think the other thing in terms of staffing structures is a broader sense. You know, we don't need names everywhere, but somebody said the other day, you know, I think that WECA's got 400 employees. Okay, well, how many employees does it have? You know, what's the broad shape of the organisation and where these employees are sitting? And obviously there's a value for money question around that. But there doesn't need to be as much detail at that level, but certainly having everybody here having a flavour of that would be really useful.
So we can certainly provide the diagram of the organisational accountability, and we provide that to staff, and it's available on our Connect page. Since the senior leadership changes took place, the Chief Executive has issued 3 operational notes to directors who are well aware of their accountabilities and their delegations, and those operational notes have been sent to the relevant heads of service. And so in this interim period, we're very, very clear. With regards to the wider staff structure, that's exactly what we're working on now. We're currently around 425 colleagues. We're projected to grow to about 500 in the next 18 months if current trends persist. And the work we're doing here is about ensuring that we grow safely and we grow very intentionally, rather than what has previously happened where growth has happened quite organically and you get the confusion which you've alluded to, Councillor Thomas.
Thank you very much, Ben. Lucy and then Toby.
Yes, thank you very much, Ben. I've only got a small question, actually. It was in point 15 in your report that the tense kind of changes. It's in the past at the beginning, and saying it was chaired by the Director of Operations and then is attended. I just wondered how it's just a mistake or something that's going to change. And the second point is number 16, the engagement of a consultancy, Inner Circle Consultants, to provide capacity for a 12-week period. I just wondered what the cost of that, you know, in number 24, we're saying every pound of public money must be justified, and whether we could receive that. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. So when I reread the paper this morning to remind myself of what I'd written, I did stumble across paragraph 15, and I'm so sorry for the clumsy use of tenses there. So the target operating model was, the first draft was designed by our heads of service. I chaired the group. We've paused that. So the product has gone to Inner Circle, who we've commissioned. They're reviewing it and stress testing it. And then I'll reconvene the group and then share the final first draft then with the unitary authorities once it's been sense checked, because it currently it's in a very good state, but it still reads like 15 people have written it. So so forgive me on the paragraph 15 and the tenses, but it will resume once that work is completed. Inner Circle have been commissioned for a 12-week period. We are now on week 5. With regards to the cost, I think we can share that with you, but I will have to look to legal and stuff to make sure that I can do it safely. So,
thank you, Toby.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, Ben. Hope you're doing okay. I must admit the name Inner Circle for the consultants doesn't fill me with confidence about a collaborative. It could be. I'm just after some reassurance really about the collaboration with the unitary authorities on the development of the target operating model. It's not actually mentioned so much in the paper that you've presented to us today, more an afterthought at the end saying it will be shared with the UAs, but we know that our region is an overlapping Venn diagram with WECA in the middle, and there's sort of blurred boundaries of responsibilities. And also in this forum and the main committee, we often hear about a kind of rosy relationship, but we do know that on the ground, in some areas, there are still tensions between WECA and the constituent authorities. So can you just reassure me that this is not just something that WECA will produce and then share with the UAs for input, that this is really being developed collaboratively across the region?
I can provide that reassurance, and I'm sure Stephen will want to provide further details. So one of the things which we're doing as part of the OIP is putting in place a new decision pathway, which includes the creation of a regional directors forum, which will at the very least force that collaboration going forward. With regards to the development of the TOM, I know it's come up several times and been discussed at CEOs, but I've also updated directors of strategy, which are my counterparts currently, on the development of that. I have to say the conversation has been really productive, but the real interest has actually been in the development of a regional development framework and how we go forward with that. And Inner Circle will be meeting with chief executives and talking to senior leaders to develop that piece of work, and that is being developed in a collaborative fashion. So, Stephen, do you want to talk more about that?
One of the things that has been really good about having Inner Circle in for such a short period of time is really intense, and their focus is, as Ben said, on the regional delivery framework, our own organisational operating model, and standing up our project and programme management office. So there are 3 things they're doing. They have effectively said to us, which is the kind of why you get people from outside in, they said, well, for us to be able to do the bits that are about you, we really need to be able to understand what does it mean for the region? How do you work with your unitary authority colleagues in particular? And we'll sort of, if we had a blank sheet of paper and we were starting from the beginning, of course, we'd start there, wouldn't we? That's clearly not where we start. So what we're doing is we're doing them in parallel, and there are one-to-ones with each chief executive and Inner Circle scheduled probably for the next 2 weeks, I think. And then in about 4 or 6 weeks' time, we're going to do a workshop with all chief execs. So they're very engaged, or certainly very interested, and we are going to engage them in it. I suspect the answer will be, it will probably evolve, because it's a big question. Things like, how do other places organise their transport functions? It's a big topic. We don't have a passenger transport executive. That's a strategic choice. It's not for today, but it's going to take a while. So we're going to work on that very carefully. Meanwhile, we've got to organise ourselves to be, consistently running things with great information flowing around, so that we know how we're doing on a day-to-day basis. That target operating model is the sort of here and now bread and butter. Keep the lights on, do it better for us. But the chief execs are critical to this, as of course are their leaders and committee members. So there is a lot going on at once, but it's incredibly intense. I'm spending about a day a week of my time on this at the moment, and you're probably more. And we would be happy to repeat Ben's point, to bring a bit more back once we've fleshed out the next level. The next layer of detail is what we're doing right now in terms of our own organisation. We have our directors set now sorted, and our staff obviously need to hear first what it means for them, but we're working very quickly because the piece of work within a circle will be done by middle of May-ish. We want to then turn that into an action plan to implement and engage with our staff on, because we want this all done by the autumn, so that we can then face into that established authority status with confidence. So that's an idea of the pace.
Thank you, Chair. I am with Toby about the title of our consultants. I look forward to hearing from the Illuminati in due course. My question on this is actually, I like what's being suggested. I've got no issue with that. I want to see the structure, but that's already been offered and everything else. My question is, are we double counting? Actually, this seems to sit more readily with the audit committee, which is to make governance and structure than it necessarily does scrutiny. Just so long as we're not getting both committees marking the same bit of homework, if you know what I mean. I just flagged that, but otherwise I've got no issues.
I think it's a reasonable observation. I think it's of such systemic importance that we need to have a handle on it. I mean, would be my view, and it was kind of a consensus from the last meeting.
If helpful, Chair, we could offer a joint briefing.
Yeah. Thank you. Stephen's offering a joint brief if we wanted at some stage. Kelvin.
Thank you. I mean, for me, it's about how WECA remains agile actually in this process. You know, the danger with public bodies and bureaucracies is the bureaucracy gets in the way. And actually, what we need, I think, is an organisation that's really focused on delivery, and that we have the ability to both bring organisations together, but equally be able to short circuit sort of decision making, as long as those people are kind of kept informed. So for me, you know, it's about being agile and delivery. And kind of, Stephen, you've mentioned that this is where you perhaps thinks we're going to get to when we get to that place. I just wondered if you had a sentence on how we remain agile.
Well, I mean, I'd like to think we're going to become more agile, because in too many areas of the organisation there is inconsistency in how we approach tasks that look similar, but because one department got stood up to do a project at a point in time using, you know, a bit of government money from over here, that it looks different to the way they do it in this department. And the idea being you begin to be more predictable, more reliable in how you get stuff done. And it's exactly all about that in a world where the integrated settlement, it is about giving us more choices over the things we do. In the past, it was possible to simply say, "Oh, never mind, we've had a pot of money from DVT here and a pot of money from DFT there. They've got their own rules, so we just need to respond, as it were, to the rules they've given us." And therefore, you might have 2 or possibly 5 different versions of the same thing. In a world where we get largely, with some strings, more, you know, one bucket of money, then you no longer have either the need or the excuse to do things differently. That should speed things up, along with having a growth strategy without an outcomes framework, which says what we're trying to do. We didn't have one of those either. So I'm optimistic about what this will do to agility.
Thanks very much. Councillor Rippington.
Yeah, thanks very much. I absolutely get the necessity to get the organisational structure right. And obviously, we're looking into a future where this is going to grow and grow. My concern is always about the fact that the mayoral authority is still a democratically overseen organisation, but the number of people that one person at the head, one democratically elected person, is overseeing is growing and growing and growing. So how are we kind of, you know, in a unitary authority, officers regularly come into contact with democratically elected officials. You know, it happens all the time. Whereas I imagine in an organisation this big, that contact with the mayor for most people is a very rare thing. So I'm wondering how we sort of get that democratic accountability going down through the structure, as well as getting the structure itself correct.
So there have been some real positive changes on that front. So I think while it wouldn't be the day-to-day experience for every member of staff to meet the mayor, she is very visible within the building and is very accessible within the building, and has attended several of our staff conferences, which we have. So we have monthly staff meetings And then the mayor has also attended the annual staff meeting, which took place at Ashton Gate. So the mayor does receive quite a lot of information from various parts of the organisation, and there's pros and cons. I say that as a director. Sometimes the mayor can find out about something before you necessarily know about it. But I think that is actually really positive, and I think it also is very good at keeping senior leadership on their feet as well.
Thank you. And I think what Ben's saying is around culture in some ways. I think that the kind of issues that you're picking up, Tim, are actually part of what's being covered in the next stage of national legislation, in both the kind of the devolution bill that's coming up, and then the standards and accountability bill that's going to follow next year, where there's a lot of concern across the country around making sure that those democratic checks and balances are in place in the combined authorities because of that concentration of power. So I think at a national level, it's really being thought through to some detail in the upcoming national legislation. Thank you very much, Ben. So, I mean, I think Mark's challenge is also kind of relevant for the next item, which is, looking at the kind of the planned IT for the business. Again, I think making sure that a kind of an effective large organisation has sort of the right approach to kind of systems and IT is of such central importance that we felt at the last committee meeting that it was worth some discussion here. So, Bob, okay, I think if you come up here, please. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I lead the digital and data team. My name is Bob O'Brien. So, Chair, thank you. This report provides the committee with an update on the development of the authority's digital and data strategy. And we've heard today a lot about the importance of data in everything we do, which helps underline the importance of this strategy. It focuses on strengthening the authority's internal digital and data capabilities, including the systems, data governance, platforms, and workforce skills that support how the organisation operates, and it's a key work stream within the authority's organisational improvement programme. The authority currently delivers its digital and data services through a combination of internal capability and partnerships, including a partnership with North Somerset Council and DELT. Through the development of the strategy, we have identified that the authority has a number of valuable data sources and examples of good practice. The opportunity now is to better connect that data and treat it as a corporate asset so that it can be used more consistently to support decision-making, reporting, and insight across the organisation. The strategy is structured around 4 themes: improving digital experiences, strengthening and connecting our organisational data, building digital and data capability across the workforce, and ensuring that secure and well-governed technology foundations exist. The strategy provides a framework for more coordinated and sustainable digital and technology investment, helping the authority make better use of its data, reduce duplication, and improve organisational insight. The committee is asked to note the progress made in developing the strategy and to provide any comments on the proposed strategic approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there was concern raised about whether we're core. I think we're at 8, and we're not. I think it becomes an issue if we need to vote on something. Thank you, Bob. Questions for Bob? Jess, then Toby.
I just wanted to ask about the use of AI within WECA, and whether as part of the strategy you will set a framework for how AI is used, looking at risks and opportunity, and also a commitment on transparency publicly.
Absolutely, thank you for the question. It's part of the Digital Foundations theme, and there's an initiative to develop clear guidance and policy on ethical use of AI as part of the strategy.
Thanks. Morning, Bob. Thank you for coming. A question about open data, which I don't know if it's there in the full strategy, but it's not mentioned in the executive summary that we've got. I mean, my experience of open data, open to the public, is that it works best when it's really built into the core data principles of the organisation, because it means you don't have to have systems for open and internal data and all that kind of thing. And just in keeping with the principles of the target operating model that we discussed just now, can you talk a little bit about how open data will be included in the strategy?
Sure, thank you. So yes, in both the trusted and connected data theme and the theme that's about our digital foundations, we're looking at how we can better connect and reuse data. And there's also, in developing our roadmap, which is the work that's underway at the moment, looking at how we develop the data architecture such that it enables those points that you've made, but does so in a safe and compliant way, so that both internal users and external users can trust the data they're seeing and understand what they're seeing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think I felt that it would be useful to have a sense of the kind of what the systems are that are in place at the moment. I think it's useful to say that we've still got that working relationship in place with kind of North Somerset providing quite a lot of our IT and or the authorities' IT and DELT. Getting a stronger sense of the organisation's needs, what might in business be called kind of functional specifications, would be useful, and also a stronger sense of what are we going to be doing with IT and systems in the next few years. I mean, where's the spend going to be? Is it going to be on performance management internally? Is it going to be, how are we going to be monitoring modal share in transport, for example, or bus service reliability? Having data as a sort of built into the sort of the heart of what the organisation is doing, and a stronger sense of this is the money we're going to be spending, this is what we're going to be getting from it. I mean, I think just knowing that is being thought through properly at the next stage would be really useful. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thanks very much, Bob. Yeah. Thank you. So just on to the constitutional review. So I think what I want to say on that is that we had a really good briefing from Steve Hellard a couple of months ago, maybe even less, and we're putting forward, changes are being put forward both in line with emerging national legislation and the possibility of North Somerset joining the authority. Codification of the mayor's attendance at these meetings has been put into the latest version of the constitution of scrutiny, and that this will be going forward to the June joint committee meeting, and with the recognition that North Somerset joining the authority will make a difference, and the kind of further guidance, legal requirements coming down the line from changes in national legislation. So it's not going to be, this isn't going to be the final word on this subject. So with that kind of brief introduction, Steve, do you want to add anything more to that, and then take questions from members?
Yes, thanks. Thanks, James. Yeah, this is phase one, if you like, of the review. Phase two will follow the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill and changes arising from that. You may be aware that there were some changes, proposed amendments to the Act tabled last Thursday, so we'll wait to see the outcome of those. So as James says, there will be further changes. What I've tried to do to make it easy to refer to is I've set out in the table the main changes that have been made to the terms of reference, together with the reason for those changes. You'll see that the current terms of reference extend to about half a page. So we've added to those quite considerably. So the track change version is pretty much all read. So apologies for that, but hopefully the table sets out the main changes together with the reasons, and I'm more than happy to take any questions on the thinking of the working group behind those changes. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Steve. So, Councillor Weston, and Councillor Wells.
Thank you, Chair. Mine had actually a question popped into my head. I have no issue with what's in the paper, but popped in my head as actually the Chair was speaking. Should North, because obviously the balance on the Scrutiny Committee is determined by needing to balance political representation and also balance authority representation. And if you introduce another authority, should we say mid-term, mid-year, do we automatically then trigger a rebalance? Or does it wait until the end of the next political year?
Pass.
No, I couldn't find it here either, so I wasn't actually sure.
Yeah, so I think what will happen is I guess a lot of that will depend on the wording of the order that comes from the Secretary of State. But there will be a need, I would imagine, to increase the numbers on the Scrutiny Committee once if North Somerset were to join. You're quite right; it does need to be politically proportionate. So, yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
Good spot. Toby.
I think Councillor Clark was first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think the clarification on these various points is much needed. I was just going to flag whether we need to sort of clarify the duration of the meetings and whether there's flexibility in that. The reason I'm saying that is we have no control over what goes to the WECA committee. Some months it's a very, very busy agenda. Sometimes it's lighter. We shouldn't be looking at our scrutiny in terms of trying to squeeze that into the allocated time we have for a meeting. And sometimes it'd be a bit laborious for us to call an extraordinary meeting where we could just have a bit of flexibility in how long these meetings last.
Thank you. That's a helpful observation. And I think we take that away, Steve. That'd be great.
Yeah,
speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, there's no proposed guillotine, as it's called, in the sense that the meeting has to end after, say 3 hours. So I think the only issue in relation to how long you carry on at the moment would be in relation to quorum and if people had to leave.
Thanks very much, Toby. Then Tim.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks for the briefing that we had before. That was helpful, and I can see some of the suggestions there now reflected in the terms of reference. That's great. There's a few typographical issues which maybe I'll just share with you outside of the meeting. Then a few points I wanted to clarify. Perhaps I'll just give you all of them, and then you can come back. So task and finish groups, I think it's great to codify those. I think they could be useful to this committee. At the moment, as written, I don't think it enforces that the members of a task and finish group have to be members of the committee. I wanted to clarify that that's the case, because if that is the case, I think that's a good thing. As I suggested in our briefings, we can draft in other members from our constituent authorities whilst maintaining the political balance, of course. So if you could clarify that. Then the section on the attendance of the mayor is blank in the papers. So if you could clarify what the current direction is on that. And then a final point, just to say I'm pleased to see the formalisation of the responsibility of the committee in with regards to policy development and review. It's good to see that described.
Yep, thank you. Sorry, in relation to the attendance of the mayor, I should have mentioned in the presentation of the report, there was a placeholder in the papers. Wording has subsequently been agreed that the chair is happy with, which does codify the attendance of the mayor for half an hour at the start of each of these meetings. So that wording will now be included in the terms of reference. It also provides that if in exceptional circumstances the mayor is unable to attend, then written responses will be provided to the questions, so that there is still that provision for those questions to be put even if the mayor isn't able to attend. In relation to the task and finish groups, I think that there isn't any prescription around the task and finish groups themselves being limited to members of this committee on the basis that they wouldn't necessarily be a subcommittee. So you should be able to call in expertise in a particular area to help with that particular task and finish group looking at a particular subject. Of course, the task and finish group then report back to this committee. There'll be no issue with that. And yes, I thought it was really important to pick up the point about policy development in the terms of reference, because that is a real strength really of the Review and Scrutiny Committee. And I think we've seen probably from the two reports that came earlier the value that the committee can add to that. So I think it's really important to reflect that in the terms of reference. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim, did you?
Yeah, just a small point of clarity, really. I'm just in terms of the quoracy issue and the start of a meeting. Is it the case that the meeting can't start until we're quorate, or is it the case that the meeting can start for things like?
I think it's that we can't take votes, and given the very limited number of votes that we actually take.
So generally you could, because it says in here you also can't ask questions of officers and things like that.
So if a meeting's quorate, then legally it can't take place. But what we've provided for within the terms of reference is that you could hold an informal meeting, okay, but there wouldn't be any binding votes or any business to be able to be carried out, because there needs to be a quorum for that to happen. And the quorum is set by legislation, so it's not something that's within our power to change.
Yeah, I think getting a bit more clarity on that around what would happen if an informal meeting took place, because I think by and large you want to work through the business if that was feasible. I mean, I'm not talking about if there's 2 or 3 people, but you know, if there's 7 rather than 8 as a minimum, that I think that's a good pointer. I think I just want to pick up Councillor Clark's point. I think there is a risk with what's coming down the line from government, that actually the requirements for scrutiny, the thing, it becomes too heavy to fly in some ways, that actually what's being asked of scrutiny as government piles responsibility onto combined authorities then has that knock-on effect onto the scrutiny function. And you need to know that capacity is being designed in, and what's workable for councillors who've got, you know, some pretty heavy, you know, other duties elsewhere, that they've got that capacity, or that somehow that capacity is being built into the system for them to be able to do their job effectively. So I think it's a really good point, but I think it's one to keep an eye on probably at this stage, to see what happens with what comes through from government.
Yeah, I was just think that just on that point, it's something that also doesn't, I think, get taken into account at the moment when you're looking at boundary reviews and the number of councillors the local authorities have and that sort of thing. So whether there's some way that can be fed back, that perhaps it should be a consideration if you're increasing the workload for those councillors on a combined authority as well.
Thank you. And then Calum, did you want to make a point? And then
it's just a really small point, and in a sense it's saying when we're looking at, you say there's no time limit on these meetings. Well, we've got an adult social care committee meeting this afternoon, and I think we just need to be aware that there's other duties we have elsewhere, and I'm not sure, you know, that, well, let's be positive. Please make sure that's taken into account.
Just finally to say that there will be a phase 2 review following the new Act coming into force. So we'll be bringing back a report to pick up any changes needed to your terms of reference as a result of that. The review is obviously wider than your terms of reference, but those wider changes are going through the audit committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Steve. I think we're on to the.
I believe according to the papers, we're supposed to vote on this. There's a recommendation for voting.
Oh, yes. So, yes, indeed. Could I have I'm happy to propose this, propose acceptance of the report. Do I have a seconder? Yeah, Lucy, thank you very much. Any objections? So it goes through. Very much. Thank you.
I think it's the first thing we've ever voted on here. First thing we've ever voted on here. Exciting.
So we're on to the work plan report, and I think just in terms of activities that have taken place, we obviously had the transport vision briefing session and question and answer session with the mayor. We've had the other items referenced in the report, and we've got the proposed items going forward. The visit to Brabazon and the Western Innovation Arc has been put on hold while we were awaiting confirmation of the new town status. It was a bit politically delicate. So now that that's literally in the news in the last couple of days, I'll go back to officers and look at firming that up. I think the other element that's not in the papers at this stage is some of the briefing sessions that we'll be looking for on transport, on TCR, and on further sessions on bus reform. So I think having some extra flesh on the bones there will be useful as well. Any other comments on the work planning? Councillor Hodge.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I had a few suggestions and things that might go on, but feel free to accept some and not others. So as I was going through the papers, I wondered whether the lessons learned exercise from CRSTS, whether that, I think it is coming to the advisory panels, but whether we would want to have sight of that piece of work that's being done by consultants. Looking at the terms of the TOM work, there was, I know it's quite dry, but there was a new contract and supplier management operating model blueprint. So it's contracts and procurement and how we deal with that. And I wouldn't mind a bit more information on that and what it means in practice, but it might be just something that's very simple to explain. The transport levy, again, the new WECA, the agreeing the new formulas, and also I'm a bit confused about the when we can use reserves for cost pressures and when we can't. So they're able to sustain provision in 26-27, but they will run out and can't in 27-28. I just wondered if a bit more on transport levy as a briefing or for us. And finally, I was also interested in reserves generally. If a briefing on that, the difference between earmarked and non-earmarked reserves. And I'm a bit confused about we're building up our general reserves to exceed the 5% target, but our usable reserves also increase. I don't understand the mechanism for that, and they can be used in some places and they can't be used in others. And I do appreciate the difference between earmarked and non-earmarked, but I don't. I wondered if some more understanding of that might be useful generally.
Thank you. Sweet. Any other comments, and then I'll kind of pick up on those. No, okay. So I think what I would say could be helpful on the kind of second point around the reserves, both the transport reserves and the general reserves, is that if there was a kind of briefing paper of some kind, so that we had an explainer around the sort of questions that Lucy's asking, then we can work out what is left over that would need to be addressed, or we might find that a kind of short briefing paper could actually work for us and be sufficient. I think lessons learned on CRSTS could be a really helpful session, and I think Stephen's comment on the contracts and procurement model was maybe that's something that's more appropriate for audit. Yeah, thank you. Lovely. Thanks very much. And I think if we take a 10-minute break, which will leave us with 45 minutes for looking at the joint committee items, but I don't think, dangerous words, but I don't think it's as packed as some of the. It's lighter, I think. So we're looking now at papers for the WECA and Joint Committee meeting on Friday, and we have officers who are happy to speak to these. And the first item on that is the mayoral combined authority and mayoral budget. And James, you're going to talk to that. James, I think it might also be worth you taking questions on the Joint Committee as well at the same time, rather than do the money stuff all at the same time. If that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much.
Do you want to introduce, or should we just go straight into questions?
We can do a quick introduction.
Yeah, go for it then.
So I'll introduce both papers at the same time then, if we're going to tackle questions on both. So the first report sets out the Q3 forecast position for 25-26 for the combined authority. Overall, the position's broadly stable. Revenue expenditure is forecast at 172.1 million, which is about 4.8 million below the current budget. That largely reflects reprofiling and some lower in-year spend than anticipated in some of the grant-funded programmes. Capital expenditure is about £209.3 million forecast, which is about £12 million below budget, and that's mainly due to rephasing within the transport programme. Treasury performance continues to be strong, which is leaving us in a position to help strengthen reserves and our overall financial resilience for the long term. That report also introduces the 26-27 business plan in Appendix 12. The second of the two financial reports is the Q3 forecast for the Joint Committee budget. Again, overall, the position's relatively stable, with some variances which largely reflect timing differences rather than underlying pressures, the most notable of which is £2 million underspend in environment due to the reprofiling of the Warm Homes programme. The report also seeks approval for a small number of EDF reallocations and change requests across both EDF and RIF programmes, primarily to reflect updated delivery profiles. So if anyone's got any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thanks very much. I think my first observation is about the business plan, which comes into that overall pack, as it were. I mean, is that right to launch?
That's fine. We may need Jess Lee, who's the Director of Strategy and Policy, and she's on her way, I understand, for any business.
Okay, let's see if there's questions come up on that. Okay, so should we leave questions around the business plan for Jess?
If we can, that'd be
okay then.
great. Thank you.
Can I ask on page 79 what are future transport zones? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
What are future transport zones?
So future transport zones is the name of a DFT funded programme. It's £28 million, I believe, total funding. So it incorporates a number of different projects within there, one of which is IMS Micromobility. We've also got Mobility as a Service app, which you'll likely be aware of, and transport data hubs. They're the main ones within there.
Okay, thanks. Jess, do you want to sit here? Yeah, lovely, thanks. So just one question on the business plan. Yeah. I mean, it's great to have that there and that level of detail. And one of the things that was asked for at the last meeting was a kind of a sense of kind of activity quarter by quarter.
Yep.
Talking with Stephen about that a few days ago, yep, he was saying that you're looking to do that kind of activity analysis in a kind of corporate performance framework, and that there might be a kind of piece of software that you've got that then kind of sets up, this is what we're doing Q1, Q2, etc.
Yeah, we have a project tracker that we're about to, we're in the process of implementing at the moment, that will keep track of exactly where all the projects are, so we have that kind of visibility and how they then tie back to delivery of the outcomes that are set out in the growth strategy and also in the business plan. And the corporate performance framework will allow us to be able to monitor progress towards delivering all of that.
Super. Is it worth picking up questions on the business plan first and then on the detailed numbers second, so that Jess can answer those?
I've also got my colleague Helen here, who is the author of the business plan, in case I don't know the answers.
Okay. Questions on the business plan? Lucy?
Yes, I have one. Thank you. It's very nice to have it all set out, but I was slightly concerned that in transport, again, great that it's up at the top of the list, but there are quite a few sections that seem to be just development work. There's a lot of emphasis on it being delivery, but when you read the lines, it seems to be development. But I was just wanting, on page 8, I noticed, it uses the wording, we will deliver a new range of walking and cycling. And I just wondered where that sits with the existing CRSTS. It says new, so it must be some other budget and something new. But I wasn't, and it says deliver, but I wasn't sure what pot of money that was and what it was going to be for. And there was something in page 10, I thought the wording didn't quite make sense. In page 10, is that the yes, to increase active travel journeys and satisfaction, to increase mode share. And I just, is that to increase satisfaction from active travel? I just thought the sentence, I couldn't quite understand the sentence where the emphasis was.
Okay, so on that point, I think that might be a drafting thing which we will take away for next time. But yeah, absolutely, about increasing the mode share of active travel and satisfaction with the experience people are having by making that choice. I think on the other point about whether it is or not CRSTS, I'm going to have to defer to Emma for that one.
So active travel schemes are that we're delivering in the early years are those that are funded through the CRSTS and the Active Travel Fund allocations. So they're things that are already in progress. So it's not that I've got a new pot of money, Councillor Hodge.
Thank you. Any more questions on Mark on the business plan?
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Just, well, 2 quick points, if I may. When we're looking at priority 2, we're looking about what we want to do, connecting the region and everything else. We talk about improving our suburban rail network. It just feels, how we'll achieve this over the next 10 years still feels a little ethereal. In what we're planning to do in 26, 27, we quite clearly say we want to open this station, North Filton. I would have thought when it comes to rail, we could point over the next 10 years and say, we want to open this station, and that station. We can mention St. Anne's, we can mention beloved Henbury and all the rest of it. I just thought that having a tangible goal in there would be a little better for me. And the second one I want to make, when we talk about priority 3 and we talk about housing, we talk all sort of lovely, warm words and everything. But what we don't seem to talk about when we talk about housing is we want to ensure that when the housing is built, it's accompanied with the appropriate infrastructure. And maybe this is me being hypersensitive with the recent announcement of the CPNN, but I don't really want another Bradley Stoke style development. It has to be with the same infrastructure. It has to be with the proper infrastructure. So I would have thought if we can, when we're looking at our priorities, and we're talking about building new homes and new communities, the half sentence that goes with it, just to reassure me, is it'll also go with the same, with new facilities and amenities. They're my 2 points, Chair.
Thank you.
On the second one of those, if I can take that one first, the point about the infrastructure, I think that is very much the theme that we've got through the growth strategy. So that is the terms in which we talk about our housing ambitions, aligning with the transport ambitions and all the infrastructure that goes around it in the growth strategy. We will take away for next time the point about reflecting that language through into the business plan. And the other, your first point, sorry, Councillor Weston, could you just remind me?
It was about train stations.
Okay, that might be one forever.
I mean, I'll take the feedback about being more detailed in terms of the actions. As you know, with the programmes that we've got in place, we do have target dates for station opening times, so that's helpful feedback.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question around sort of the nature delivery work under priority 5, in particular where it says protecting nature through the delivery of projects within the LNRS. Are those new projects, and is there any new money associated with those?
Can I ask Helen to answer that one?
Hello. Yeah. So the local nature recovery strategy obviously sets out some of the projects and the delivery. So that's meant to be kind of a catch-all action to try and kind of say that we're remaining committed to delivering that. We will think about how we can kind of fund those projects, working with our external partners, working with also our unitary authorities. So the local nature recovery strategy will have the detail of what projects we want to be taking forward. Obviously, they're constantly kind of under review to think about which are the right ones to do now, next, those kinds of things. So it's more remaining a commitment to that strategy.
Any more questions on the business plan? No. Okay, so I think back to the numbers. I mean, I think this does also highlight perhaps that it would be helpful to separate the kind of the financial projections from the business plan. The business plan seems as a kind of standalone item in its own right when it comes to future scrutiny meetings. Yeah. I do want to first of all on the numbers just say a thank you for the explainer of the different projects that we have from kind of page 58, which was kind of what we'd asked for previous meetings. I think having that as a kind of general accompaniment really helps ease of understanding of where these huge numbers of projects, you know, a bit more in the public domain, what they are. So thank you. Yep. So questions then around the really more around the monies. Councillor Weston.
Thank you. Mine is actually, I think I'll probably need to have this at maybe an expansion note offline. I think it's on number 11, economy and skills. We're looking at the underspend on there. We talk about skills boot camps and how that's mostly the driver for it. I'd love to have a little explanation as to what that difference is, why there is that difference, what steps we're taking around that. I realise that's not really for the numbers team, but possibly if I could get an explanation on that one at a later date.
Thank you. More questions? Yeah, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, following on the skills bootcamp, it says the variance was due to the original budget assumption being based on 100% learner completion rate. Was there no data that could have been used to come up with a slightly more realistic figure?
Okay. Any more questions? Lucy?
Yes, I've got a few. I'll just start with the main one in that, and this is in the spirit of, you know, asking questions, you know, residents might want to know the answer to, that asking stupid questions that I don't understand. So optimism bias in the capital delivery. So in transport, we're obviously spending 50 million less than budgeted for. Could you explain again about optimism bias? It's almost the factor that is on the other side of the graph to balance where we haven't got somewhere. But the other things I wanted to ask about is, why do we, it's a small sum, but have low delivery on the low carbon and retrofit, you know, half a million, I think, underspent on that. In the figure 5 that breaks down the revenue by cost category, so the third party payments obviously mostly made up of the skills bootcamp and the other grant funded things, but the sentence that alongside in shift delivery from external providers to internal, how does that contribute to that sum as well, and what proportion of it is it of that 19 million? And then, sorry, in the transport levy section, I think there's possibly, this is just a typo, I think there's possibly 2 points that say the same thing, 34 and 35 in different ways. Ended up with both of them. And then with the expenditure on transport levy, so I understand that we're obviously beefing up our reserves to the tune of adding in 5.7 million, but in terms of transport levy, the reserves are fully utilised in a particular period of time, and they can't be topped up in the next year. There'll be insufficient reserves. Is that because they come from earmarked reserves, anything that goes to and forward for the transport levy? So those are my questions really. So optimism bias, the low carbon and retrofit, the cost by category for third party payments, and the when you can use reserves for transport levy.
Okay, so the optimism bias, we apply that because we know from historic data that people are always optimistic about what they can deliver on capital projects within the year. So we look at what's happened in the past in terms of what they said they were going to do and what they actually did, and then apply a percentage reduction to sort of bring it back to a realistic level that we think is going to be achieved. We only started doing that from last financial year, just to try and make the numbers a little bit more realistic, and we were really quite close by the time we got to the end of it. So it gives a much more realistic view of what we're actually going to deliver in terms of money out the door for the capital programme. The point around low carbon and retrofit, I'll have to take that away because off the top of my head, I'm afraid I don't know. And a little bit of a similar answer on figure 5. There are a few things where we made some assumptions when we put together the budget about how new funding or certain funding lines might be delivered. On some of those, they're things that we've procured ourselves rather than grant funding out. So that contribute to some of that 19 million. What proportion of it? Again, off the top of my head, I don't know. But I can take that away and get that information for you. That's not a problem. You are quite right that those 2 points are basically duplicated on the transport levy. So that is my mistake. Apologies. And the reserve points, we build up reserves where obviously we make an estimate about what the transport levy is going to spend. Historically, we never quite get it right. Historically, there have been some underspends as well from the money that we've received from the UAs. Where that's happened, we have created an earmarked reserve that allows us to sort of smooth some of the variations in cost for future years. At the end of next financial year, those will all be used up. They're largely used up in this financial year. So at that point, we won't have anything left.
Okay, that's perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, James. Page 53, there is a kind of 17.5 million figure in the capital expenditure relating to Bristol City Centre, with what looks like presumably a shortfall in expenditure of 16 million, which is kind of a big number. I wonder whether that was Park Street or not. About halfway down. Bristol City Centre.
So I think that some of that is due to the way, so if you look further down, there are all those various other Bristol City Centre projects where we've got a new forecast essentially, and it's just because the Bristol City Centre, it's been split out into multiple other bits. So yeah, I mean, you can see there's a good probably 11 million pounds that's just moved over to the other lines. I don't off the top of my head know where the variances are, but again, I'm happy to take that away if you'd like to know.
Yeah, thanks, that would make sense. Tim.
Yeah, obviously a lot of our budgets have built-in contingency, but what do we think the impact of the current global situation might be on? Are we already looking at revising some of these budgets in terms of spiraling costs for construction, you know, fuel, that kind of thing?
Bit of musical chairs again, unless there are any more questions on the budget side. No. So, Pete, you're talking to the investment fund and the delivery assurance.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. Turning to the investment fund programme report first, this provides the regular update on the position on the investment fund programme and new approvals. In terms of this report, there are 5 new funding awards proposed for work related to nature recovery, climate resilience, clean energy, housing policy development and regeneration capacity. Approval is also support for an award of 164k to provide a clean energy pilot for festivals and live events. The final recommendation related to the investment fund sees the return of the 10 million award for the Green Growth West Fund. This will now not proceed owing to macroeconomic factors and changing market appetite, freeing up this sum for redeployment to support other growth strategy priorities. The other recommendations in the report relate to authority to administer and spend 6 new external grant funding awards, being 396k to support the development of the Brabazon and West Innovation Arc, the alignment of Adult Skills Fund and Boot Camps funding, new awards of DFE funding to support post-16 education, the expected receipt of 25 million through the Creative Places Growth Fund, £1 million to support the expansion of the combined authority, and a further award of Made Smarter funding to deliver low carbon business support.
Thank you, Pete. Could I pick up on the very disappointing sort of withdrawal of the Green Growth West Fund? I understand also that the National Wealth Fund had sort of set the parameters for what the kind of the combined authority policy was, and that the goalposts were moved. So it wasn't really, it was kind of down to that as well as to changing market conditions. Yeah, so
I can pick that one up, Chair. When the committee approved the 10 million, it was very much a cornerstone investment that needed to be matched by additional private sector capital, and then subsequently further by public sector co-investment to enable us collectively to go and get private sector investment. We talked about a fund of up around 50 or 60 million in total. We did work in the design of the fund with the National Wealth Fund closely. They had a local authority advisory arm who were very supportive, and as you say, we weren't making an assumption that it was definitely there, but we were certainly making an assumption we would need to find someone of their scale to co-invest. The process resulted in a conversation at their investment committee, I understand, that coincided with a new strategy in the National Wealth Fund, who have made it clear that their strategic direction is away from co-investing in funds now towards more direct investment in large national schemes. And so unfortunately, that meant that they could not continue. We did consider alternative public sector co-investors. I approached the British Business Bank, but there just doesn't appear to be the scale. We're talking, at least 10 million is what we needed, possibly more, in order to then be able to attract that private match, which, as anyone who knows how to put these funds together, has ever any experience with these funds, you need to have scale to get the private sector to be interested. And so whilst there was plenty, I think, private sector interest, that lack of a public sector co-investor meant that we weren't able to meet the conditions that the committee had set. So it is disappointing, but we think that enough time has elapsed that we need to really call time on it. And so that money being returned to the headroom feels like the right thing to do.
Thank you. Toby.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted to ask about the regeneration capacity. So I think it's about 1.7 million going into regen capacity across the region, 175k to each constituent authority, which is welcome and sorely needed, I think, at least in Bristol. I was just wondering, with the obviously the bulk of that 1.7 million is then being retained by the combined authority. So how does the combined authority intend to resource that work, and what specifically will the combined authority do in that frame?
Yeah, John, do you want to speak to that? I mean, is that worth covering when John comes up? Actually, just kind of hold it back, perhaps, rather than have people. Yeah, I think that, can we cover that when John comes to speak? If that's okay. Yep. Any more questions for Pete? Councillor David.
Thank you. It's really good to see in the detail some investment in the nature recovery work plan. I just wanted to ask what the source of money would be for project delivery once the pipeline of projects has been identified. I noticed it talked about one large scale project being delivered. Do you know where that one is, and how do we do more?
Yeah, John could pick that up as well.
Okay, can we pick that up when John comes to the front as well? Thank you. Any more? Okay. I think the other thing I just wanted to kind of observe really was this huge £25 million of Creative Growth Fund money. Could you give us a little bit of an explainer on what that is? And that seems to be centrally government prescribed. Okay.
Well,
Okay, yeah, I think you do it,
For
Steve.
brevity and to avoid
Yeah,
the Jack in the Box syndrome. I mean, so we were one of 6 places that was identified as having a sufficiently, as it were, lively, vibrant and valuable creative and cultural industry sector. The government decided that through the Creative Industries Action Plan, in fact, it was an action of this task force, and we were notified that we were in line to be included, along with 5 other places. There was an extensive period of partner engagement. I think something over 300 individuals and organisations in the region have been involved in pulling together what is essentially an outline expression of interest process, which we are led to believe has landed well. And now we can move forward to receive the money and, importantly, to stand up the governance and the arrangements that will be needed to make sure we spend it wisely. And so it isn't all allocated, pre-allocated. There are some identified priorities. In particular, the government has said and the Creative Industries Task Force strategy makes it clear that digital create tech, as it's called, and for us, film and TV, and to a certain degree music, those are priority areas for our region that align with the industrial strategy priorities for the Creative Industries Council and the Creative Industries Task Force. So we're in a good place. We're at the start. It's a multi-year award, five-year award, but we want to get the governance right. It sounds boring, doesn't it? But it really is important that we make best use of the money, that we bring in as much match as we can. We make the money work really hard, not just for those creatives and those businesses, of course, but also for the communities, because we've got some fantastic assets in the region. There are at least 2 film studios that I'm aware of, not just the Bottle Yard, as our friends at South Gloucestershire remind us, but we have a vibrant, creative scene. We have Ardman. We have real opportunities to do more than has ever really been done before. I think with a growth strategy that prioritises the sector, we can link it to things like transport and housing in a way I don't think the region has been able to do before. So we're really excited about it, but it is just the start.
Thank you. If there aren't any more questions on the investment fund, then we go on to delivery assurance. Any questions on delivery assurance for Pete? No, thanks very much. And the next item is the social value policy in procurement and contracts, which I think Elliot is presenting. So,
Chair, can we just clarify what time this meeting finishes?
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it should finish at 12:30. I think we might run on 5 or 10 minutes potentially. And I think the other thing I forgot to say was that Councillor Clark did say that she'd be leaving at 11:15. It wasn't it was scheduled. I just forgot to reference it.
And Jerome, just quickly, I might have to leave in the next 10 minutes.
Okay, thanks. I think that will take us down to, we'll still be at 8, but I don't think there's any votes, so things might go informal. Okay. So, Elliot, can you introduce the policy and then take questions?
Yep, sure. So yeah, very brief introduction then. So we've recently updated our social value policy, centrally within the business. It's aligned to the growth plan, and we've consulted with the Mayor and is aligned with her key priorities and themes. This is now being reflected into how we approach social value in the context of procurements and contract management, and we've established a procurement contract framework, which I've circulated. So that's a very high level overview.
Thank you.
What percentage do we normally try and get out of procurement on social value?
So Procurement Act guidance is minimum. Sorry, apologies. Procurement Act guidance is 10% threshold is a minimum.
And that's what we're aiming for.
That's what we're proposing, yeah. But we've got the flexibility to increase that should we choose to, depend on the procurement and the nature of that project.
The reason I'm asking is I used to write procurement bids, so I used to handle procurement processes, but I was gamekeeper and poacher. And 10% is fine. If you're going for 20%, you're just asking to be lied to. So no, the 10% is realistic. Otherwise, you just fudge to all the figures.
Question of clarification: what does that 10%? 10% of what? What does that actually mean?
Thank you. That's your evaluation criteria. So typically you're out to market for say 60-65% technical, then you have a 20-25% commercial, and then 10% is dedicated to social value.
So it's the weighting.
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Any questions on the Toby?
So it's good to see in the report about you consulting with the VCSE sector. was wondering if there's anything the combined authority can do to kind of match make between organisations looking to deliver social value and organisations in the VCSE sector that need that support. Certainly what I've found locally is that you've got companies that have got contracts that need to do social value, but they don't know about the community garden around the corner that needs some help. So what can you do as a matchmaker between those two types of organisation?
I think the framework design, so we've created key themes, we've created example tests that you can put into your evaluation criteria in terms of questions, topics, etc., and then some measures of how you measure against that. So that guidance is for our in-house procurement teams, but we can also share that throughout the procurement process. I think we can't steer people to specific schemes or and say that's what you must do, because it's a procurement process, it has to be transparent, it has to be fair, and have the ability for people that perhaps don't know as much about social value. I think there's a level of encouragement, specifically SMEs, that perhaps are smaller organisations that don't have that experience or don't have like the broader understanding of how to achieve what we're asking. And I think, yeah, we can look to perhaps some of the bigger organisations that we contract with and maybe share knowledge and try and transition that to those smaller organisations to help bring them up a level to create that fairer market. But does that answer your question?
Not quite.
Okay.
But maybe it's not something within the scope of the NCA's responsibility. I just think there is a need in general for there to be some kind of marketplace where VCSE organisations can connect with organisations that can support them. But I honestly don't know who would be best placed to carry out that function without breaching any kind of procurement rules.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that away and we can explore that further. But yeah, there's no specific or direct answer to that immediately at the moment.
I'm sorry, I know we're short of time, but I'm just, it's great, but the monitoring and the actual holding the contractors to account, and is there kind of going to be an ongoing audit? I mean, I've seen, this putting this social value into contracts and then it not being monitored, and that's the end of it. So how can we follow up on this long term and make sure that officers do have time to manage those contracts, make sure that's delivered, and then maybe audit whether it is delivered?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So I think we're currently going through a bit of a review of how we do contract management within the organisation as part of our OP programme. And we have a tentative operation model for how contracts are managed. So gold contracts, commercially managed centrally is the proposal. That's going through socialisation with the business. So longer term, once we've got that resource in place and that model embedded, then I would see the social value would come very much part of that process in terms of that's the commitment and obligation within the contract. That team for a gold contract would be responsible for measuring it and making sure performance is delivered. For lesser contracts, bronze, silvers possibly, then it would be the wider business contract managers in the operational teams. But that's something we're working through as an organisation.
I think that what we're hearing is how will this work in practice, because it could just be that this is a report that ends up, and actually when you look at who the top 20 suppliers are of the combined authority, that you really couldn't detect that there was a social value framework in place. So I think how it's monitored on an ongoing basis should come back at some stage, because that's where the devil's in the detail. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much, Elliot. Okay. So this is a diary of kind of key work upcoming. I think it would be helpful to see in that some of the transport work scheduled in. I think we know that the TCR, the big TCR detail needs to be done by September, so that if we can get some, that's not really kind of quite captured there at the moment, nor bus reform, but I think I might be also getting a bit mixed up between Scrutiny's work and the Joint Committee's work. So,
so the purpose of this paper is the second time that we've brought it to the committee. The purpose is to set out the work that we are doing to develop the strategic plans for the organisation over the coming period. I think much of what you're mentioning in terms of transport and bus stuff, it comes under the transport strategy and bus plan, which at the TCR plan will sort of form one element of the sort of transport strategy in terms of how it's going to be delivered. I think the things to reflect in introducing this, last time I brought it, the feedback that the committee had was that you would like to see sort of key dates for when we're anticipating each of these happening. So we've incorporated that, and those are the dates we're working to. And obviously we'll see what nearer the time whether they're accurate or not. But certainly that's where the time frame that we're working to. And I think the intention is to give early visibility to the committee of those sort of strategic pieces, so that you have an opportunity to feed in and you know what's coming. And then anything you want to pick up offline or in separate sessions, we can obviously do that. So the only one that is on there that we're anticipating finishing or publishing, if you like, before the next committee cycle is this investment prospectus. But I think the thing to say about that is that the way I sort of envisage the investment prospectus being developed is that it is very much a living document. There will be things on there that we will need to continue developing the proposition. Things might fall away, we might get things invested, and so they'll come off our prospectus. So I think it will be an ongoing element of our kind of strategic work that we at various points for specific purposes, like for the UK Reef event, which is in May, we might need to sort of print it, publish it, and have it to hand to people. But it'll be a kind of ever evolving piece of work. But otherwise, things are beyond the SDS. Obviously, John's going to talk to you about it shortly, and other things on there are all further into the future. So,
thank you.
Happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Any questions, Tim?
Yeah, just briefly, both the transport strategy and the bus plan, I think, things that we would be interested in knowing more about. Certainly on the bus plan, it's just been announced there's a new engagement taking place. I think that's the second or third bus engagement that I can remember WECA doing. So I'd be really interested to find out how this one's going to be different. And yeah.
Thank you. Toby?
Just a quick clarification on the bus reform work. Does that fit into the bus plan?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm reliably informed it does.
Thank you.
Quick one as well, just on B, spatial development strategy. Will that include the recent announcement of, or be reworked to include the recent announcement of the new town in Brabazon?
Yes, that will be one element of the spatial development strategy work. John's coming to talk to you about that more broadly in a minute, I think.
Lovely. Thank you, Jess.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Emma, on to transport paper that's come to the Joint Committee.
Right.
Just a bit of background and context for this.
Yep.
Thank you.
So the report deals with three main parts. The first part of that is around the IMS contract, which expires in July this year. And the paper seeks to get a delegation to me in consultation with, under the usual delegations, with the UA directors to do three things: to issue a tender for a future supplier, to then award the contract, and to establish contract and operational arrangements, so done in partnership with obviously UA colleagues, to be clear about how we're managing that into the future. There is a section in the paper updating on where we are with the TCR funding, and actually it asked the committee to note the submission of the draft local transport development delivery plan that was submitted to DFT on Friday, as per the delegations from the previous committee. So you will recall that in October, the committee agreed to allocate 141, I'm rounding up slightly, but 141 million to the existing CRSTS programme to complete those schemes to March 29. So that, alongside the integrated transport block funding and the maintenance funding, which is funding that goes directly to the unitary authorities, is largely the capital available for the first 2 years of the TCR programme. So what the report seeks to do is to set out some high-level allocations by mode, which is set out in the table, which is under the paragraph 31. I think it's important to note, and it is noted in a couple of places throughout the report, particularly around the fact that this is an iterative process. So the Department for Transport have been clear that they are expecting, iterations of this delivery plan to continue to happen, not dissimilar to how the delivery of CRSTS has gone. So that has changed, obviously, as you know, several times through the delivery. And we are working between now and September on the next iteration of the local transport delivery plan, which is due for September. It sets out that we will be undertaking some processes to develop and to prioritise schemes between now and September. So we don't have a confirmed list of schemes. It's important to acknowledge that right now. In terms of all of the particularly bus, active travel, etc. There's some work for us to do, which we're doing in partnership to September to confirm that. Then we set out recognising some of the lessons learned from the CRSDS programme. It's important to get moving with development work, particularly on schemes that take a long time. So there is a table that sets out under paragraph 36 what we will be working on in terms of that, the scheme development in year 1 and 2. Then the final part of the report is around noting the outcomes of the CRSTS rebaselining that we have submitted to DfT, and it also delegates authority to me in consultation with under the usual delegations for both signing off any remaining change requests and full business cases for the CRSTS programme. That's in a direct response to conversations that we've been having with directors and partners around the need to do things quickly. So that's just helping us do that at speed. So I'm happy to take any questions, but just to come back on 2 points that I noted I was asked earlier. So on the inflation point that you raised earlier, unsurprisingly, that is featuring in all our risk registers now. That's really one of those big uncertainties. We don't yet know what the full extent of that implication will be, but we're going to have to just keep monitoring that and work through it as we go with partners. But as I say, it is one of those things that's already being flagged through our processes. And then just on the bus reform bus plan, so the bus plan itself is coming forward for engagement. So it has actually been, I know it doesn't probably feel like it, but it's actually been quite a long time since WECA directly spoke to the public around buses, which is why we want to do that at this point in time. It's really useful. The bus reform work, if you like, is a mechanism of how you may implement what we see in the bus plan. So it's not, the bus plan will not be a place that says this is exactly what we're doing, exactly how, because as you know, we're doing some further work to look at the bus reform, which features in the TCR table and is part of the feedback that we've given previously. So there's bus reform work is happening, and we want to be prepared to enable that if that be the right solution. But and so the bus plan is coming forward to set out what good looks like as part of that conversation. Hopefully that's clear.
Questions for Emma? Toby, then Tim.
Chair, did you want to take questions on each of the subparts separately, or?
I think given the amount of time, I think probably just easier to
Okay. All right. I'm a bit wary of rushing though, because we don't have enough time. It kind of goes back to Tristan's point earlier.
Well, if we say that we go to 1:45, I mean, I know it's been a long meeting. Would that be okay? Yeah. But when do you want to leave, Mark? Okay. Yeah. Well, absolute finish. Hard stop at 1:45.
Never seen you sprint, Mark. Okay, I'll get going then. So micromobility, I think it is important to dwell on this, since with the delegations that are being proposed, this is essentially the last we'll see of it at committee until the contract is awarded, right? And it is something that's been discussed at this committee a few times over the years. So I'm happy to see that the price changes, package changes they'll have to consult with the combined authority when they want to change them, because that's been a problem with the current operator, and things have changed rapidly without the combined authority even knowing that price is going to change. And it is becoming very expensive, the micromobility scheme as is. And we know that ridership, whilst high is not as high as it was under the previous operator by about, I think it's 10,000 versus 15,000. So my question on that is whether the price changes will be subject to consultation. Will the contract have a price cap for the initial prices in the contract?
I actually don't know the answer to that one, so I would have to come back to it. But we will be putting the provisions in place that are in the contract here. And one of the delegations is for us to work out how we actually operate and manage that contract collectively better, including the I can't remember what it's called now, but the officer group that oversees it will be continually involved in that. So I can come back with a specific answer.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. And then on the TCR LTDP part of the paper, I have to say I'm quite disappointed that this is, I know it's only a draft, but that something has been submitted, has been created without the involvement of this committee. It's been on record many times over the last probably 18 months back from when we were calling it CRSTS2 that this committee wanted to be involved in the preparation of that submission. And every time we've asked, it's been put off and said, yeah, okay, we're just not quite ready to do that engagement with the committee just yet. And then we hear in between our last committee and this one that something has been submitted without any consultation. So I just want to know how that happened and how we can prevent that kind of thing from happening again, please.
Could I pick that up first, Toby? And then, I mean, I think I put the same challenge both to the mayor and to Stephen. The response was that this is about this stage is about bucket sizes for the different elements. And I agree we should have been consulted on that. I think having that sense of and we've pushed hard on the transport vision side to make sure at least we had the ability to get into the joint committee for Friday, what our kind of collective feedback is on that, having had engagement with the mayor and with Emma. So I think there's definitely some learning there. And going forward, having that clarity on timings, it should, and that discipline around scrutiny being involved early and with pre-scrutiny, I think that's what everybody in the committee wants. And I would just repeat that. And I don't know if you want to say anything else, Emma.
No, other than to say we've absolutely heard that and are putting together the programme now of how we get to September, because that is going to be quite pacey again, making sure that we don't miss the step.
Perhaps I could just conclude by saying I think actually the bucket size part of the equation is actually where we could have added a lot of value. Probably the next stage where we're going into a huge raft of different schemes, we probably don't want to be, I don't know, arguing over this and that scheme, but actually setting the boundaries for it is something where we could have added value. So, but we are where we are.
Yeah, I agree. And I also know that the unitary authorities have been giving similar sort of feedback. And even quite late in the day, the active travel bucket increased in size very significantly. So, I think that's something that, broadly speaking, most members of the committee will feel very positive about. Yeah, would have been nice to have seen it. I agree. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you. Two questions very quickly. First, on the LTDP, there's a mayoral local priority fund. I'm just wondering if you could expand on what that is.
Yeah, so, that was quite loud, wasn't it? Sorry about that. So that is an allocation for, that we again need to work up the detail of how it's going to work between now and September, but it's an allocation for more like localised, smaller interventions where they're supported by the community to come forward and be funded in additionality to what would be schemes that come through your maintenance and integrated transport block funding. So we had quite a lot of pushback through the discussions around maintenance, more local flexibility. So we've responded to that with the creation of that. How it will work, I can't tell you exactly today, but that is something that we will know by September.
Okay, thanks. And secondly, on the CRSTS paper, page 225, under Bristol, there's a Bristol unallocated general of 14 million. And I was just wondering if we could get some clarity on that as well.
This is where my version doesn't have the page numbers on, so that's why I was frantically turning. So the as we've gone through the rebaselining process, there was an element of tidying up with some of the figures around some of the Bristol allocations, which were actually picked up in the earlier paper, where things that were allocated to the city centre have been broken down into varying different pots. That particular element is part of the wider agreed overall pot that we agreed for Bristol City Council. They haven't allocated that to specific schemes at this time, partly due to the fact that we've had a lot of work to do to get the rebaselining done and agreed. So that is an unallocated pot that will come forward and be allocated for Bristol schemes as they go through further development.
Okay, thank you.
Tristan, then Mark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just want to come back on the rental charges for e-scooters. My question to the Mayor. I think the rental prices for residents is going to be key, primarily because Secretary of State of Transport said the genie's out of the bottle on private e-scooters. And if the rental costs are too high, I suspect we're likely to see members of the public defaulting to private scooters in the same way that if bus fares are too high, they default to their private motor vehicle. So yeah, I think it does need to be considered in terms of the procurement process.
Yeah, so clearly it will be part of the procurement process because we all want to make them as cheap and affordable for people to use as possible. What I can't confirm is whether we are, as part of that process, capping the price. I don't think we probably are because that will be part of the tendering process itself. So please be reassured that that is one of the key aims for us, is to make sure that it is affordable for people to use. So it will be part of that process.
Mark.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask about the unallocated as well. I just wondered whether this was anything to do with Park Street and money not being allocated there.
So, as you can see in the detail of the report, there are elements of the Bristol programme that have been removed in terms of scope. Yes. That is clear in the appendices, and when the final iterations of business cases come forward, the unallocated pot will be reallocated within that envelope.
Okay. Quick question and quick point. Could I have some additional detail? Offline is absolutely fine about you're probably already chatting, Henbury line frequency improvements. It's mentioned there, so I'd like to know what feasibility, what design work, all that is being done there. What you're looking at and everything. And the second point from me is I do like it when you're talking about the milestones and the milestone variants of the Brabazon station being built in 2026, 27. I think originally it was meant to be built in 2020, 21. So, yeah, there are a few things did happen, but to say that it's on schedule, it's 5 years late.
on revised schedule. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to provide that information about what we're covering the feasibility, but it is, as you'd expect, how do we get more trains on that line?
Thanks very much. And what I would like to pick up, on page 201, we've got the kind of scope validation of the mass transit, which has got some quite sort of clearly defined routes where it's considered that the money is going to be spent. And just having early scrutiny and early unitary authority input around that. And we've talked about that. What you've also talked about is greater clarity around the network. Where will these trams or underground trains or enhanced buses actually be moving between, and do we think those are the right destinations and venues? So the earlier we've got those kind of that stronger sense of what will mass transit look like and public engagement around that, the better. I think that's it. Lucy, very quickly, because otherwise we're not going to have any time for John and spatial development strategy.
Okay, yeah, sorry, really quickly. So I appreciate meeting that September date is going to be a huge challenge, lots of difficult decisions, and it was just a plea for the strategic gaps in the active travel network to give us enough time and tell us what you need from the unitaries so that we contribute the right things and don't spend ages contributing the wrong bits of information. So so that we can really engage with that, fill in some of those gaps, and the risks about the contractually committed milestones. Great that the delegation been helped out, but 31 out of 57 projects not yet approved, and £72 million of the programme has committed dates close to that. If there's anything else you can think of to speed up the process, because I know Baines is in there in that list quite heavily, trying to get RFBCs done in time. So if there's any other magic wand that could speed it up, that would be great.
So we, on the speeding up point, we have been doing quite a lot of work with both the directors and the officer group that meet on CRSTS around how we can streamline things. We're toing and froing on that, but we are making, where we can within our delegations, things as easy as possible, whilst balancing the need for us to undertake our role as the accountable body and make sure that we're signing things off and, you know, the due diligence that we need to do as an organisation as well. So I hope things will start to, you know, will continue to feel a bit better for UAs as they're coming forward, and we are, you know, early heads up and sharing information as much as we can to keep that moving.
Thanks very much. And our final.
Okay. Morning, everyone, or afternoon, everyone. Very quickly then, just to say a couple of things on the SDS paper, and then perhaps we can take questions, and happy to answer the other questions that were asked. So why have we brought this paper forward now? Well, as many of you will know, we are still waiting for the exact guidance from the government in relation to the SDS. So in the absence of that, we're working to the principles of the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, a thing called the Top Tips for SDS Readiness, which has been produced by MHCLG and the Planning Advisory Service, who have produced a thing called an SDS Readiness Guide and Toolkit. So those are the kind of documents that we're working to at the moment, and those very clearly suggest that we should start work on the SDS by scoping out what a vision-led and outcome-focused SDS should look like. So that's the kind of content that we've been working up at the moment. What you have in front of you has been done in collaboration with the unitary authorities and through some initial engagement with the organisations that we think are likely to be the statutory consultees. Clearly, there is a risk around this, that we are progressing some of that work in advance of the details of the revised NPPF being confirmed. But as I said, we are doing it in conjunction with all the information that MHCLG and the Planning Advisory Service are giving us, and we are working in very, very close collaboration with them. So I won't say any more at this stage, but happy to take questions for Alex. All right.
Any questions on the spatial development strategy? No, yeah, Tristan.
Yeah, it's obviously the news came out this morning about Brabazon and the Western Innovation Arc. I'm on the fence a bit like Mark, insofar as I think.
I'm not on the fence.
in theory, we do need to maximise brownfield regeneration to minimise the need for greenbelt release. But at the same time, we've seen how Stroud District Council have crashed and burned with their proposals for funding Junction 12 and 14 and the M5 being upgraded. If we are looking at 40,000 houses potentially at Brabazon, it's going to need significant investment. And I don't need to remind officers that JLTP4 had a 6 billion shortfall in funding. So we really do need government to come forward and explain how we can actually make that a sustainable development, as opposed to just on paper, it looks okay, let's try and make it work, and bodging it.
Just as a point of clarification to start, the 40,000 homes referenced are across Brabazon, and the wider innovation are not at Brabazon itself. There is not capacity for 40,000 homes on the former airfield.
I think it's 24.
I haven't looked at it yet, but that's a new number that goes up. I think in terms of this, we are clear that this needs to be high quality transport-led development. That starts with the rail station and increasing services. There's also a need for significant east-west public transport. whether that's Metrobus, some sort of mass transit system or whatever. We're working that through internally with the councils and working with MHCLG to ensure that if this is coming forward as a new town, we get the investment that's needed to make it happen. And that will need to work through over a significant time period.
Thank you. Unless there are any more questions on spatial development strategy, can we pick up those two outstanding questions from Jess and from Toby? Jess, do you want to go first? Nature, was it nature recovery?
About the nature investment zone. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we're working with the West of England Nature Partnership through their existing pipeline of projects, but we also have an ambition to go further than that. And through things like the investment planning process, we want to kind of come up with some bigger, more ambitious strategic projects that we think are going to have a significant impact strategically on nature in the region. So it's work in progress, but we will continue to work through the West of England Nature Partnership to identify those. No, it hasn't yet.
Yes, the question about the regen capacity and what the combined authority will be doing and how it will resource its large part of that budget.
Yeah, so I've currently got about 2.5 FTE in my regeneration team at the moment, and that is seeking to cover the development of our work around the 5 growth zones, the West Innovation Arc that we've just talked about, and other major regeneration programs like Bristol Temple Quarter. It's also the relationship management with Homes England through the Strategic Place Partnership, with the announcement that's just come over the weekend of a £45 million brownfield land fund. We need to manage that successfully. And we also clearly have other pieces of work that we're responsible for around that government have asked us to do around homelessness, cladding, and a number of other things. So the money that we're seeking approval for will enable us to build expertise and capacity to take forward those programs and those projects, working very closely with the unitary authorities who, I think, as you highlighted, we've agreed to provide some capacity funding with, which, like you, I think is really important that we work collaboratively and as much as possible as one team. So those are the sorts of things that it will be giving us capacity to do over the coming years.
Sorry that the meeting overran slightly. Thank you very much for all your contributions, and close the meeting. And the next meeting is Monday, June 2nd at 10:30.
Chair, can I ask you a question on the minutes that I wanted to interrupt you with earlier on about the impact report on the police and crime panel being abolished, please? I was told I couldn't raise it earlier on.
Sorry, John. No, and that's because there wasn't any other business item that I saw at the end. So could we perhaps speak about that separately? Do you want to have a chat about that now? Take it outside the meeting?